School is not on tonight, thank you very much.
All right, guys, it is 6 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're up running?
Yes, we are up running. So tonight, we are just going to, we welcome Chief Marique to talk to us a little bit about his budget, his proposed budget for 2023. This isn't really, we're not going to be voting on anything tonight. We're going over what he has prepared for us. We're going to ask questions and kind of take it from there, okay? We're not in this to slice, cut, dice, do whatever. Really just get a better understanding of where the budget requests are coming from. And what we'll do is kind of move things a little bit out of order tonight so that Chief Marique can go through his stuff and get done as quickly as possible. We'd like to try to keep this meeting down to 2 hours if we possibly can, okay?
Roll call first.
Let's do a quick roll call, starting with
Mike Williams.
Mike, Lisa Gattro,
Humphrey Williams?
Stephanie Mills.
Kimberly Ward. Peg Hurd.
Bob Carrier.
and a quorum is here. All right, Chief, if you'd like to go ahead and get started.
Need that or what?
When you're done doing your little bit, I can bring it back up.
Let's try this. Might be a small marathon as far as.
Oh,
It
give
should.
ye of little faith.
For this building? You're right. But I'm impressed.
Oh.
All right.
I don't know. It disappeared.
Here. There. I'm good. So, I have the packet that I traditionally give you during the beginning of the first presentation. We emailed out 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
A week or so after the initial one. So, printed it. We can go over that at some point. I might reference it at some point during this little presentation. Basically, what I did is I talked to Laura. She said you guys wanted to go over the increases. So I took the original PowerPoint, I deleted all the slides that were minuscule changes or irrelevant changes, and then I added a couple things to break down the big changes in more detail. And at any point, just interrupt me, ask me questions, and we'll kind of take it informally and go from there. So that's my favorite little cartoon, and this is my second favorite cartoon, which you've all seen now. This was the initial slide that I gave you. The full-time salary line is an increase of $15,000. So that is budgeted increases or increases that occurred in 2022. And it's the 2% COLA for 2023 as of July, as well as an extra 24 hours of overtime per month.
Was it 24 or 36?
36.
36 hours of overtime.
Yeah, 36. Originally I budgeted 24 per employee.
Yeah.
So I upped it to 36 per employee, which is an extra 12 per employee.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So 24 total. So that's how I came up with that number.
Before you go past that,
Yep.
Nick, if I can ask a question, because I was going back and looking at your calculations, and it's just a question to
I
find
have that
out.
right, yeah.
So, in looking at the annual base salary,
Yep.
the 25.9, and we'll just talk January to June, 25.96 times 48 hours a week. So, is the straight, comes out to your 32,398, and
Correct.
then at 8 hours roughly a week, or 36 hours a month, you got overtime. You double counting that? It's 40, it should be 40 hours of straight time.
They get
and-
paid 48 hours of straight time.
Okay, and then they're getting an additional 8 hours over it?
They
Of
only get
overtime?
So they work 2 24-hour shifts.
Right,
That's 48 hours. That's all straight time. They stay late or work an extra shift. That's the overtime that I'm counting.
okay, that's all I'm getting at, so
Yeah.
that accounts for 36 additional hours. I wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
because when I went back and looked, I thought they were getting
overtime
paid
training
40.
and calls, that accounts for the 36 hours. So it's 36 times the hourly rate time at time and a half.
So the 36 is over and above the 48 hours they're working.
Correct.
All right,
Yeah,
that
and
makes a
that's-
difference, because when I did some calculations, I thought it was 40 and then 8. Okay.
Yeah, no, straight time. That's why we went to a 48-hour shift, because you get extra straight time.
No, I understand. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't 40 plus 8, it was 48 plus roughly just about 8 hours, okay?
So, and the reason I broke it January to June and July to December is because the retirement system changes, so I needed the total for the first 6 months and the total
Mhm.
for the second 6 months. Typically, it's all in the formula, and it just comes out to the total,
Mhm.
but I had to break it down for the retirement system. And if you want more details or wanna see the calculations, I have the actual, Excel sheet that I did.
No, I can, I understand the calculations. I was just asking because I know it was 48 and then 8. I wanted to make sure it wasn't supposed to be 40 plus 8. Because actually, when I sent something back out, I thought maybe it was supposed to be 40 and 8, so.
No, so right there, 1.5 B5 times B7 times 6.
Okay.
And it's the same all the way through the rest of it. And the same thing with like holiday pay, 66 hours. twice a year.
66 twice a year, yeah.
Yep, at their straight
Okay,
time rate. And
Okay.
then that's the total, double that. So that's how I come up with it.
I'm gonna make the adjustment now on this.
Alright, so. That's the original. So here's a couple talking points on the full-time salary. So I do need more full-time employees. There's no sugarcoating it. In October, this month, there's been 10 unfilled shifts. The one current full-time employee we have has worked 471 hours of overtime since May 1st.
Wow.
And he doesn't work it's not like he takes every open shift. That's like one a week, roughly, 1.5 a week maybe, and then there'll be weeks where all the shifts are filled and with part-time people. But we have one guy, people are struggling to keep their full-time employees because the market is an employee's market right now. The last thing we wanna do is burn him out. So he feels obligated to work them. I don't blame him, I appreciate it, but he can't do that forever. So part-time employee availability is inconsistent, on-call employees availability is inconsistent, and that's because all of the other full-time jobs, whether they're firefighters or dispatchers or whatever they may be doing, they all have the same issue. They're all working equal amounts of overtime at their other full-time jobs. And you can't force a part-time employee to come to work when they're really doing you a favor. And we have some excellent, excellent part-time employees. But the last thing I wanna do is burn them out. So, Wakefield, has 7 full-time employees. Farmington has 4 full-time employees. They got 3 last year. Wakefield has increased their staffing, over the last, 2003, they got their first 2. And then more recently, in the last few years, they got, the last 4, so.
And how many does Milton have?
2 positions, 1 filled.
One filled?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got our first one in 1999. He worked 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. We got our second one in 2007, which we still have employed here as a part-time employee. He went on to another department and still works with us 15 years later. Yeah, and then that's been it. So nothing since 2007.
And what are our chances if how long have we had that one open?
Since May. We didn't do anything for the first few months. We put it out, we advertised in late July, August. At the same time, Dover and Concord were each hiring 10.
Mhm.
So basically, any candidate around was absorbed into those departments. We put it out again, the process just closed. We had 5 applicants, 2 weren't qualified. We were gonna interview 3. 1 just dropped out today, so we're down to 2. What I would absolutely love to do, and I'm probably gonna bring it up to the selectmen, is hire both of them, to be honest with you. Because if we don't get them now, what are we gonna get? And if we don't have part-time employees to fill them, the only additional cost is, the retirement system. And
So
health
how many
benefits.
part-time openings do we have?
it's hard to say, there's no specific amount of part-time people that we have. For a while, we were full because people weren't getting the shifts that they wanted. Like firefighter A would come and say, I would like to take 1 a week or 2 a month. And I was able to give everybody their shifts, and some people didn't get enough. But in the last 8 months, there's not enough of them to fill all the shifts. And if things were normal and they weren't committed to their full-time jobs, I'd have plenty. You know what I mean? There's enough people, there's enough bodies to fill the shifts part-time, but it's the availability that's the problem.
I guess maybe if you had both your full-time, how many shifts would be left for part-time? Like, maybe, because I think
Yeah.
you were looking more for,
Yeah.
to make a comparison of
Right.
adding a third full-timer to how many
there's
part-timers?
14 shifts a week. Each full-time employee takes 2, so there'd be 6 if we had 3, which would leave 7 shifts for the part-time people.
So about the equivalent of do we have part-time people now?
Oh, yeah.
So you would want to add a third but not get rid of any of the part-time.
I wouldn't get rid of the bodies, their hours would just be reduced. Or,
But would you be able to sustain that with all the, like, the math? Because you'd have to give them how many of those shifts, the third full-timer, how many of the, like,
would get
you'd have a
2
total.
of the part-time shifts. But honestly, right now, like, look at the number of hours that Jason's working, 470.
Right, no, I get it,
If he's working those, and then there's vacancies, so it would just be more consistent, like, I'm trying to think.
I understand your
So-
reasoning, I'm just,
Yeah.
like, trying to,
Like,
Math.
already this week alone, tomorrow was full. No, tomorrow wasn't full, Jason was working overtime, full-time employee working overtime during the day. Part-time employee got called in to work their full-time job tomorrow night, so now that went out, nobody was available, Jason took it, so now Jason's on 24 hours of overtime tomorrow. Again, because they got called to their full-time job, and I can't blame them for that, like, that's their livelihood, that's their commitment.
are they gonna be okay with getting hours dropped? Are they gonna be like,
I think it's all gonna shake out, and they won't actually, they'll get all the hours they want.
because I'm just saying we're not gonna lose them because of it, like,
We're not
yeah.
gonna lose them because of it. No.
So here's my question.
Yep.
If we hire the 2 full-time people that you want to hire, that have applied,
Yep.
does that lower the amount of overtime?
I would like to believe that it would, but I don't have a good answer for you on that one.
I'm trying to
Well,
see where we
budget-wise,
can.
you would probably, budget-wise, you would probably get one or
What
the
she was
other.
saying about
Like,
the 2 that are not qualified, would he be willing to train? Send them to training?
It's not a matter of training, it's a matter of, in the state of New Hampshire, you have to pass a physical agility test, and these people aren't on the list, that test is only offered once a year, twice a year, and that time period's gone by, so they're not even eligible to be hired per state law for another year anyway. And they don't have the minimum qualifications anyway, as far as EMS experience and everything. It was one of those things, they saw an advertisement and they,
We all do it.
yeah.
Wow. But as short as there is, I thought there'd be at least a few more classes so that we can get some people trained.
Yeah, but we can't really afford to have on-the-job training.
Well, I mean, don't they go to some place where, like, every now and then you gotta go, I think it's Ossipee or something like that, for training?
So, fire service is different than the police department. Like, police department, you hire people, you send them to the police academy, you do FTO, and that's an expectation. There's no way to get certified as a police officer, don't get me wrong, prior to being hired by a police department. In the fire service, you won't get hired unless you have the training. You have to get the training on your own ahead of time. And typically, you do that by joining a volunteer fire department, then they'll send you through the training. These particular candidates were from Tamworth and somewhere up in Maine. So they're on the fire department, they still haven't gotten the proper training, or have the minimum certification, or the minimum standard to get hired in the state of New Hampshire.
With all the,
And just to
sure, go
put
ahead.
it into a little bit more perspective, Rochester is currently full, but we just hired one and we had 3 applicants. That's it. So it's not like it's not a Milton problem, there's just the city of Franklin has 14 full-time positions and they are down 7. I think they just hired 2, but they were down 7 last I heard. So all their guys are getting mandatory overtime every single day.
Yeah.
It's just, the list goes on and on and on. Some departments are lucky and they're fully staffed, others are just running short. I think it's, Hooksett is running really short. I don't know.
So you're very dependent on mutual aid then.
So, one of the things we've done recently is Farmington and Milton have come up with an automatic aid agreement. So, certain types of calls that are of serious nature, Farmington comes automatically here, and we go automatically to Farmington. But again, that's just,
Yeah,
we're getting help coming quicker,
we should not get in.
but it's also costing us a little bit of money on the other end too. Fuel and time, and it's increasing the chances that when we get a call, we're not gonna be here for the people in Milton. Which is a same problem we have in Middleton. Middleton is strictly volunteer department, they have other issues, it's not a staffing issue, it's a volunteer availability issue and an unwillingness to provide the service at the cost at what it costs. And we're charging them and going there, covering their calls, but that takes us out of service for our town. Unfortunately, we're in a position where it's kind of a little bit of a business because we have to create revenue so that we can pay the people so that they're there. So every time we go to Middleton, we get $500. And that goes into the relevant fund, which has historically been used to cover the staffing. So I'm willing to risk an hour and a half out of town to get the money so that there's somebody here 24 hours
So it's $500 per call.
in Middleton, yep.
Does that seem worth it?
We made 10
With
grand.
the gas prices the way they are and the amount of money that we're paying our staff, does $500 cover it?
The way I came up with that is,
The staff is already there.
yeah, the staff is already there.
The staff's already
so
there, you're gonna pay them either way.
It's $500 per call from the town of Middleton plus whatever we collect in revenue. So we billed them, last time I checked, and this was last year, so 2021, we billed them about $10,000 and we collected about $10,000 in revenue from insurance companies. So it was a $20,000 swing, and when we're making 200, that's, I don't do percentages well, but 5%, 10%, something like that. Is it,
Sounds good.
alright, of what we're making.
Okay. And that goes into the revolving fund to
Yeah.
pay for,
Historically pay for staffing and ambulance supplies and ambulance fuel, all the costs that, and so I started saying, I came up with that $500 number by our average income per call and the average cost per call. So I took our entire budget and divided it by our call volume. And then I did it a few other ways. I did it per capita and compared Milton to Middleton and came up with a formula that way, per household, per valuation, and it all averaged out to about $500. It's somewhere between $400 and $800, but the average was at $500.
how long ago was that?
2 years ago. It's been all of this year, all of last year, and maybe October of 19 or
So almost time to revise.
Then they may not call us.
well,
Hmm?
that's okay.
They're gonna call us, Peg. They don't have anybody else to call. I'm not saying charge them $1,000,
Right.
but I'm saying that, $500 2.5 years ago
Yep.
is probably not,
Sufficient.
sufficient now.
And so during that entire time period, that was meant to be get it in front of the budget committee, get it in front of the selectmen so that they know they have a problem and they're not gonna get this service for free, and come up with a solution. And they had an EMS committee formulated. They presented the selectmen all kinds of ideas, and they haven't done anything with it. Then I met again, they've gone through like 3 chiefs during this time. I met again with another chief, and they wanted to contract out completely, so they would pay us lump sum for the year to do EMS services, and I provided numbers to them for that. I think it was like 60,000 for day coverage only, and like 100 or 120 for around the clock coverage, which would give us an extra $100,000 to hire another full-time employee. Was what was in my head, and the numbers all worked. It was all based on that $500 and divide it all worked out, or made sense in my head. And they didn't tell me my number was ridiculous, and they didn't like it. Obviously, they haven't jumped on it, but.
Well, they're not gonna jump on it if they're paying so little.
Mm.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. Nope.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're not wrong. And the other thing I did too is I looked at every town that contracts their ambulance out, and they were all in that range as well. All right, so. This is the breakdown. Everybody good with how we came up with the numbers at
Yep.
least? Alright, so this is my part-time salary. So this is obviously the largest increase in the entire budget. It was 106 last year, 335 this year covers the following. So, and I've got another slide I'll show you that kind of breaks it down a little bit more. So all the volunteers that come back, which in the next slide you'll see that number is nosedive in the last 5 years. It covers a third on-duty responder during the day for 32 hours. So back to, there's not a lot of volunteers around specifically during the day, which goes all the way back to 1999 when we hired our first one during the day. I'd like to work towards getting an extra person during the day at least. Currently, so when Devin was the assistant chief, he worked and was budgeted 22 hours a week. So when Devin left, Tyler came in and he works a shift, a 24-hour shift, and then he works an 8-hour day. So I use that 22 hours to basically open it up to anybody instead of a specific person's salary. Is how I did that, and then I added 10 hours to it. I don't know if you're following or understand what I'm. So I'd like to have an officer or a supervisor on during the day. So like Tyler, the assistant chief, works. Jeff, the deputy chief, works. Tiffany works, and then the other lieutenants and captains will be eligible to work. That right now I'm only doing it 3 because I only have the 22 hours, 3 people. But I'd like to open it up to another day and have 4 days with coverage and try to work some weekends into that. And then it's 10 24-hour shifts. So it's the 14 shifts minus the 4 for the full-time employees leaves 10. And this is how I came up with that number. So I use $25 an hour, and it's, I have 40 hours here. Now we gotta see what I did. See if it's 32 or 40. Stand by. I have 40. So, 40 is great. If you wanna go back to 32, we can fix the number.
Except it is adding an extra full-time position, basically. I'm not talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
full-time thing, but
Yeah.
it's adding another full-time position.
And that's all part-time people, like, that's again, it's a few things. It's a way to keep people, hours available for people, especially like if they wanna work, they're not available to work, nights or 24-hour shifts, but we still wanna engage them, to keep them available to respond when they're off duty. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things going on with the benefits of having that extra person there. If we have right now, 2 people, if we have a car accident, both people go in the ambulance, we have to rely on, off-duty people coming back to get the engine, or if I'm there, I'll take the engine, but I'm not there every day, I work a full-time job too. So my goal is to have 3 people there to help with that. If we have a fire, 2 people on an engine isn't safe. 3 is not great, but at least it gives you 2 people to go in the building. It's just the direction we need to go, and if this isn't the year, I understand this isn't the year, but I'm done telling you that I can do this for the same money that we've been doing it for the last 10 years, because we can't.
question. It
You
seems
can
to me
ask
that
all the
last year,
questions.
thank you. It seems to me that last year, when you were presenting your budget, part-time people, blah, 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 were coming out of the revolving fund. And the Board of Selectmen were, why are you doing that? You know, you're ruining, you really need to put it through the budget. You come to us with these people in the budget out of the revolving account. And now it's like, I know,
Yeah.
and now it's like, oh, but the budget is so far over.
Right.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
But were multiple full-time people and all of the part-time people coming out of that revolving fund?
No full-time people,
Okay,
just the
Yeah.
part-time people. The
So-
full-time people have always been in the budget.
okay. Minus, well, two full-time
Two
people have
full-time
been
people, yeah.
in the
But this
budget.
is still adding something beyond what you had for your full-time people in the past. That 40 hours is,
That's
that's not included, I'm saying that wasn't included in the 2 ambulance attendants piece
No.
that you're
So
adding.
the only increase in this piece,
Is 80 hours.
no.
No,
I'm
that's
trying
a
to figure it
40-hour
out.
week.
So I'll pull up last year's. I hope I have it. I'll show you what I had last year. Last year was 22 hours in that top line because it was the assistant chief salary. So that was 22 hours. So there's an increase of 18 hours there. In the bottom, the middle section, it even says right there, 2 24-hour part-time employees. So I had 48 hours there last year instead of 240. I didn't change that heading. So that, where it says two 24-hour part-time firefighter, EMT paramedics, that was 48 hours last year. The top line was like 22 hours at Devon's rate, which was higher than the 25. And the salary for the call firefighters, which is basically a pool of money that they get paid at the end of the year, was the rest of it. So that line was 106,000 last year, the bottom line of that, total request. But the other thing I wanted to point out is all these full-time positions and part-time positions that I'm talking about and saying that we need is all reflected right here. 2016 to 2017, we paid the off-duty people, the call and volunteer firefighters, $44,000. 35, 29, 25, 20, and 16,000 last year. So those are all people in town, people around, we have a call, they come back in. So it's perfectly clear to me that we're not getting the responders coming back, which is why I'm sitting here saying we need people to be paid to be at the station.
Excuse me, there's no guarantee that's gonna happen. Things happen. The way things are going now, a lot of things are changing. And I know the employee's got the upper hand, but we just can't seem to get them anyway, no matter where you put the price in, but because people's got different lives, their lives have changed.
Yeah,
And
you're right, it's not
nothing's
just,
staying the same. I mean, it's hard to keep somebody dedicated for that, because, well, family changes.
but here's the thing, with the people that we do have working are the people that are dedicated, that have been there forever.
Are they the ones coming back where every time they have to get called back in?
No, because they don't live around here. Like, I'll use Pat Simmons for example. We hired him in 2007. He was here for like 5 years. He went to Dover, got his paramedic. He just got promoted to lieutenant, and he never lived in Milton. But he works 1 shift a week, consistently, unless he gets called into work. But Tyler, assistant chief's been around since 2003. He was gone for a few years. The deputy chief's been around since 2003. He works 1 shift a week, an 8-hour day. Still dedicated, consistent, but he's the one that works full-time in Summersworth and got called in.
Have we always had an admin assistant? Or is that a new position?
No, it's not a new position, it's just called out. It's a firefighter that works on the fire department that helps me with administrative stuff. Been on the fire department since 2011, and then when she's working, she helps me with it's not like a dedicated secretary or anything.
But they're during the day.
She works one of those days, one of those 8-hour days that Devin was working and picked up some of Devin's
You
stuff.
got somebody working about every day on admin?
No,
Oh,
there's only 3 people doing it right now.
okay. Here's one thing, and this is just my comment again.
And
We still gotta
I
talk.
call it admin, which it really, they've taken a lot of like Devin's responsibilities, like administrative responsibilities, but they're really there as a third provider and to drive the engine and help out, so. But I don't want them just sitting there, like, if they come as an 8-hour day, they have administrative work that needs to get done.
Bottom line on what's happening here, and this is again my comment back, is between to try to roll all of this into the budget is gonna put the budget in jeopardy, as we all know. That's not taking anything against what you're saying here. So there's almost 242,288 just in dealing with, it's actually, 246,288 when you account for the salary and you account for Social Security and you account for Medicare. The only way that we're really, in my opinion, the only way we really have a shot at this thing passing is to put it in as a separate warrant article. In which case you're asking for the additional funding so that it doesn't end up in the ambulance revolving fund, and the revolving fund can be taken care of in terms of an ambulance down the line.
Yep.
The other piece of this though is we're adding additional hours up here that's also jeopardizing this being over.
Yeah, I have
So-
no problem dropping that back to 32, and, I mean, it doesn't put a dent in it.
Well, I think it's two, you're going from, 48 hours to 240 hours.
Yeah.
And I think that's the huge,
Oh, trust me.
And by the way, when I said 246, it wasn't talking about the top line. I'm only talking about
Yeah.
the basics here. So
But it-
we gotta come up, but what I'm saying is we gotta come up with what is the total that we're gonna present to the town somehow. Because it's gotta be detailed enough to account for how that's working and what needs to be done if it has a chance at passing. We already know that if we put a budget together, that's beyond, that people are gonna go, no. And then we're stuck starting over again.
I
So-
don't disagree with you.
yeah.
But again, like Peg just said, we've been talking about this for 2 years, so I'm kind of doing what I should have done 5 years ago, and what you guys finally said to do.
And it probably would have been better received 5 years ago and not when,
Well, it's still-
5 years ago, because that's when we got the station built.
It still would have had, it still would have had to have been
That's
presented
honestly,
to the
that's part of
people
it.
as a warrant article.
The reason I knew I'd get hung out to dry if we asked for a station, then tried to staff.
yeah.
It's all, has nothing to do with we have a station, we need staffing now. We built the station because we needed
Right,
a place to put staffing, because we saw in 1999 that what we were doing as a volunteer fire department was not sustainable. So here we are, 24 years later, kind of taking it to the next
Yeah.
step, and we're in the position now. Not really in the position, we can't afford it.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, the town itself
Yeah.
and the townspeople are not in the position right
Right.
now.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
that's the, pardon my expression, sucky part of it, right? Is the fact that, you wanna be able to, put something out there that the taxpayers can afford, and you don't wanna have to cut services,
Right.
right? And that, that's the crux of it. But when you see people are struggling to, they won't even turn on their heat right now because they can't afford oil.
Right.
And now you're gonna tell them that we've gotta increase their, their property taxes by X number because we need to have more employees in town.
And people are doing it with their grocery bills too,
Yeah.
like they're
Yeah.
cutting
Doing
back,
it
like,
with it,
you know.
people are doing it with everything
yeah.
right now.
And I'm not saying it's not
Right.
needed.
Yeah, and I guess,
Is there a way for you to staff, 18 or 20 hours a day? Have that gap. I mean,
no,
no.
because there wouldn't be anybody to respond. And the other part of it is, who's gonna go home at midnight? They're not gonna do it, they're not gonna, it's not gonna work.
I'll say that's where the problem's gonna be, the hours.
I mean,
You don't wanna work
20-hour
certain hours
shifts
and what it
instead of
is.
24-hour shifts is kinda what I was thinking.
It's,
Yeah.
but the thing is, it's gonna be
But-
like, I don't wanna work that many shifts and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you,
Yeah.
the employee's got the upper hand.
Yeah, the other part of it is,
That's it.
if we don't stick with industry standard, what every other fire department's doing, they're gonna go work at every other fire department. And we need to find a way to retain the people that we have. I got told the other day that, somebody didn't come to work because they didn't wanna be alone. So there was nobody on one day. They thought there was nobody on, and then they didn't come to work. They decided not to come work the shift because they didn't wanna be with, risk the chance of being alone and getting hurt, basically. So, again, part of the reason I want the third person here is to just kinda slowly build in the direction that we need to go.
Can I ask a question, and this is just for my own
Yeah?
ignorance, maybe, I guess. How many hours are you at the station? I know you say you have a full-time job.
Yep.
How many hours do you go in?
It varies depending on when I'm working in Rochester, but like 2 or 3 days a week usually. And I know Humphrey's gonna say that I'm not there that much, but that's not true. And just because I'm not at the station doesn't mean that I'm not working.
Mm.
Like this whole, just to give you a quick example, this whole Word document that I needed to do, I tried for 2 weeks to get that done at the fire station.
Yeah.
And I cannot sit in my office without phone calls, people coming to my office, people working coming to my office, people stopping, talking. I went home and I got that done in 3 hours. That I tried for 2 weeks to get it done at the fire station.
Yeah.
So whether I'm working in my office at home and available to go on the calls, or sitting in my office at the fire station getting absolutely nothing done.
Yeah.
really
And the
doesn't
only
matter.
reason why I ask is to have somebody not go in because they were afraid of being alone.
Yeah,
You know, are you there? Is somebody else there?
right.
And that's the reason why I'm
Yeah, it
asking.
was just one of those fluke days that somebody had called out, and it was a Saturday last week.
I guess I always assumed you were full-time here. I've heard you say you have another job, but it never really occurred to me. Why aren't you full-time with us? Why aren't you that extra person and,
We can't afford them.
Yeah, that was
Oh.
my. Sorry.
I don't know.
it was just a thought, like,
I enjoy my full-time job, and I enjoy doing this part-time, and I'm keeping up with everything that needs to be done as fire chief, doing it part-time.
no, but if we
So
need,
I'd rather,
like,
honestly, I'd rather keep doing it part-time and take the money that you would be paying me full-time to have extra bodies. It doesn't make sense
It was
to have
just-
a.
it was just a
Yeah,
thought,
it doesn't, I could sit here and justify it all day long, you know what I mean? If
it just
that's-
didn't occur to me that you're not there. Like, I know you keep saying you had another job, but it didn't click to me that you weren't there. Yeah.
I have a question about a warrant article, Humphrey. So what would you put on the warrant article, to the 300,000? Or
You have to-
whatever the amount is, the exceeding amount you would put on as a warrant article, which would be,
You'd end up covering enough money in the warrant article to pay for the salaries
for
as
how
well.
long?
For what he's got
1
up
year.
here.
1
Basically,
year.
what's been covered, well, you turn around and say that you wanna, it's, the warrant article is to add the positions, is really what it comes down to. You wanna, if you're gonna put a warrant article together, it says you wanna add 24-hour positions for ambulance coverage, which, and I'm paraphrasing now, was previously covered through the ambulance revolving fund. So and then you'd have the total amount to cover that would be enough to cover the salaries as well as Social Security and Medicare, and this is what the amount is. So it's addressing the fact that we've had the people, but it was paid for through the ambulance revolving fund. And do you want to add that, and that's really what it comes down to become part of the fire department's budget?
Okay, all right, because that was my question. I mean, only because.
It's not a warrant article just to cover you for the year, it's a
Okay,
warrant
all
article
right,
to see
good,
if you're gonna
thank you.
add the positions. The only,
Thanks,
to
I
me,
feel
the only
better.
way that you're gonna get that is to have the people behind it. You know,
Mhm.
where if it's just left in there, he's presenting it now, and if the budget's this much over, which right now
They're not gonna vote for it.
would be almost $200,000 over the budget, well, it's
Bottom line,
Yeah, $180,000
The bottom-
over the budget right now, is if that's in there,
So
with not counting the changes
I
I've
do have
made.
another thought. So, but I haven't seen the total budget. What is the total amount over the last year's budget or the default budget?
Oh, right now, with the default adjusting that we've done, we are sitting at, it's 5,081,000 is what's come from the department heads.
for the default,
No, for the 5 million is their presentation.
okay.
The default right now, adjusting for some of the changes that is sitting at 4,800,000, 806,000. So you're talking 108, almost $180,000
Over.
over the default right now,
So, my,
of which most of it's
yeah, that's fine.
right here. That's what the point is.
I,
Matter of fact, all of it pretty much is right here.
I came and did my original presentation and said, these are the numbers, now we need to figure out how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And this is figuring out how we're gonna do it, so, I do have other ideas, a warrant article is one idea, I'm not opposed to that. But maybe by the time we're all done, figure out how much of it you can put in the budget, and then do the revolving account for another year. And I have numbers for the revolving account, and we can do the math together, so we're all on the same page, and see how sustainable the revolving account is. It's not fully sustainable, that's why we're doing this, but there is still $200,000.
Yeah.
But we
So-
also have to account for this year's budget that was tracked under the regular line item, so we gotta, before we go and do it that way, just
Yeah.
as cautionary thing, is that was not part of the budget this year, so we're gonna be somewhere in the $200,000 over that line item that needs to be covered. So you gotta account for that and then figure out where we go for, how you go forward.
Yeah, and
So-
that could be the overage in the fire department could be accounted for in the regular operating budget. Doesn't have to go back to the revolving account, that's what we did last year.
I'm just saying, we have to
Again,
account, no matter
yeah.
how it's done in
It's
the
gotta be
end,
accounted
it's
for.
gotta be accounted for. Because at the same time, we gotta remember what we gotta look at to keep the tax rate down too, is you don't wanna turn around and add more into it and then find out that as a result, we have to increase the tax rate to cover.
So, we can, and I can come back and talk to you guys more, but just to keep this moving, you wanna?
Yeah, this isn't the, by the way, this isn't to solve it tonight, Nick,
Yeah,
this
no,
is
no,
just
no.
to turn around and get
Any other,
everyone.
I guess what I really wanted tonight was to make sure you understood how I came up
Yeah.
with numbers and why I actually presented it to you. And you can agree or disagree with the need, I'm fine with that, but I just wanted you to understand how we got here
No,
and why we're here.
So just about the using the revolving account again from the CIP committee standpoint, like how would you, there was all about buying a new ambulance in 2023, and that was part of a problem is using
Yeah.
that. You can't buy the ambulance, and what has
So-
come up with that?
I haven't seen the final report from the CIP committee, but basically,
Thursday is our public hearing.
okay. What I found out most recently is we will not see any, if we ordered one today, we will see one in first quarter of 2025.
And,
Just
but
gonna
the
say
thought was,
that.
what we were saying is that saving it so that you didn't have to ask
Yeah.
for anything from the capital improvement, that you
Right.
could save up from the, so that,
And I think
I think I just want the
have
rest
a-
of the budget committee to hear
I
that
have
there
a lot
was
in my head
other,
about how this could all work, but again, CIP committee, selectmen, budget committee,
yeah, I know.
we gotta pay for something over here, or we can pay for it over here, it's
Yeah.
a whole lot of, we can go and ask for the ambulance money from the fund balance via warrant article, and then have plenty in the revolving account, and not worry about a warrant article for staffing, I can't make this decision, you know what I mean, that's why I'm just,
And right now, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
exactly, and
For all of it,
trust me,
unfortunately.
it's all in my head, and whether I'm articulating it correctly, or whether people understand it or not,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's why I'm kinda diarrhea of the mouth and getting all my ideas
Oh,
out.
you're
but
good.
It's,
Well-
it's not easy, trust me.
Okay, chief, the thing is, you have a capital reserve. How come, you're not using any of this stuff? You have the fire department equipment apparatus. Now, this is last year's numbers, I don't have a current one, but
Yeah.
there's $89,000 in there. On top of the fire department buildings, that's got 14,000. This stuff is 1 year old, but firefighter,
That's
there's
for-
repairs, you got one for 48,000, can't you take some of that off the,
So-
maintenance line to help out with this?
No,
Why not?
because that's for catastrophic repairs. If we had to do a pump, if we had to replace an engine, if we had to do something major, if we had to refurb a truck, if it was an accident and insurance didn't cover something, something along those lines. It's not for, preventive maintenance or,
It doesn't say preventive maintenance, it says vehicle repairs.
right.
Fire
But if
department.
you started nickel and diming it, you would not have any money in there when you needed it for a catastrophic problem.
So you're
That's-
saving it for catastrophic.
Yes.
That's kind of what happened with the revolving fund now, because you can't fund an ambulance out of the revolving,
And-
because
and-
you've been using it. Yeah.
In routine maintenance, capital reserves are not designed for routine maintenance.
Well, there's.
Capital reserves are designed for capital projects.
Oh, then let me ask you about equipment and apparatus.
Same thing.
What's catastrophic in equipment and apparatus?
Well,
No, that's not,
No,
no,
so-
that would go under the vehicles.
There's got equipment in here.
equipment and apparatus, so Jaws of Life, things that are in the CIP committee's purview, not daily operational, $1,000 here, $2,000 there, not chainsaws,
Cause I think you had a
Fittings.
line item in here for, new, uniforms, so that wouldn't come out of equipment and apparatus, the 89,000? That would go into your regular budget?
That's an awful lot of money just sitting there.
Hmm.
And this is a good time to be able to take some of it out so we can help them out with the staffing issues.
you can't use
But
that.
warrant, yeah, warrant articles are,
They gotta be specific.
But these aren't warrant articles,
I
though.
don't have the warrant articles, I was looking for
Yeah.
that to
yeah,
see it.
yeah.
So there's a line item for 25,500 for uniforms and fire gear.
I don't wanna interrupt, but I have all that in here.
Okay, no,
So-
I think he was asking,
Yeah,
why does that not fall under the 89,500 that you have saved?
because that was specifically put aside for certain things, like, a lot of that was put aside for air packs, then we got a grant. It's designed, or it should be used to save for the next pumper that we needed to buy 5 years ago, that we don't have enough money. If something happens to one of these pumpers, at least we have $89,000 to buy a used one. If we start taking 5,000, 10,000, 4,000 out of that, if something happens, we're gonna have no money.
Usually, every year, that usually replenishes, is it not,
That
or is
hasn't
it
been
going into
replenished.
the
That
CIP?
hasn't been replenished in years.
So the warrant articles, I can't think of off the top of my head, the last time I saw the warrants, but
On that particular one, an additional warrant article hasn't gone through to add money to it. The only way money gets added to it is through interest, or if you put another warrant article out to add to the capital reserve fund.
2018 maybe, money was put in that one?
Yeah, I don't know when the last time it was. But anyways, to
Vehicle
add to the account, it has to be another warrant article that goes
Right.
before the town. Unless, and they have written somewhere, so much goes in each year, but normally the warrant article's 1 year at
Well-
a time, so.
that's probably where like the CIP comes
Yeah.
into play.
Yeah, those capital reserve funds are all tied to the CIP.
Okay.
See, it's the same thing the school does. The school puts a warrant article out each year to turn around and add to the funding.
But out of the surplus.
Out of the surplus,
Yeah.
however it's done.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
You have to have the warrant article to add to that capital
Right.
reserve fund.
Right,
I think
and
need to
we
vote for
can't, I mean, ours are very specific also, that we can't use them for this year thing, whatever we want.
All right,
All right.
let's move on,
So,
please.
retirement is directly tied to, the increase in that's directly
Yeah.
tied to the increase in the other, so we don't need to talk about that. Training, I put it back to where it was initially. I know there was usage, Humphrey was looking at the usage on it, but during the period of time that dropped the usage, we weren't doing classes because of COVID and
Yep.
everything like that. So I predict that that will be increased again. Oops. And I'd like to have it back to the amount that it's been for several years, $6,800.
I have a question for you about training.
Yes.
Do you take old buildings and burn them down for training?
You can.
Okay.
There's a lot of,
Just checking, I'll be calling you.
it's not as easy as it used to be, let's put it that way.
But to,
You have to have asbestos abatements, you have to pull all kinds of shingles off a lot of times, it's almost not worth it. We had one the other day and we talked to the contractor and they said, don't let the fire department do it because it's more of a hassle than crushing it with an excavator. The homeowner wanted to
What?
give us a building and the contractor said no. But it probably wouldn't, he's probably right, it would have been.
There are other liabilities that kick in that can cause some problems for the fire.
So no, Peg, they're not burning buildings off of your property.
Darn.
We're definitely not burning kids or anything on your property.
Actually, I have no asbestos, but I don't want my house burned, thank
Like
you
the
very
yellow
much.
house on Silver Street, that could be a potential to do that. We'd have to shut Silver Street down. We'd really have to look into it, the one the town owns, but, you gotta have the absolute, just past the water tower on the left, or just before the water tower. So uniforms. This is one of the lines that I should have increased periodically over, the last several years, but in an effort to keep the budget flat, I just left it the same and bought less with the same amount of money. That's kinda catching up to us now, so I put the proper increase in there, and this line right here, well, it's kinda dark, sorry. Shows that, so I went through all my purchase orders today, with the exception of a few, like the $59 for the gloves that I carried. I didn't buy gloves that year, so I couldn't figure that out, but I just carried the old number down. But the actual coat and pants and most of the boots are the actual increases that we're paying for gear in the last 5 years, so $2,500 for a set, and that doesn't include a helmet, cause we reuse them for years and years and years. $2,500 in 2016, $4,900 the stuff that's on order right now. So you multiply that by the 5 sets that are in the budget, that is where the increase came from.
You had it down there as 17,000 for 5 pieces of gear, okay?
Yep.
I've got it from what you had from your presentation,
Yep.
and all I'm getting at is, so that was 5, and a suggestion, because if this year you haven't spent, you could buy some gear
Yeah, it's
before
on
the
order.
year's out,
It's on order, but it won't be, like, it's delayed.
okay?
But yeah.
But my point was, if you could buy one extra set and cut that down by 1 set, that's a
Yeah.
pretty good savings of knocking 3,400 off. And that was all I'm gonna say, go with 4, because you've got like 3 sets of fire boots, 5 vests. To me, I just think and that's a suggestion to look at it, because when we're trying, that is a pretty good chunk.
Yeah.
If you knock that down, and that's a suggestion from me personally, but if you knocked it down to 4 sets and said, that would be 17,000, that would reduce it from 17 down $3,400 from there. That actually would still give you almost a 3.7% increase, which is where we've been trying to control some of the increases. That's still an increase over last year's budget.
So, and we can cut it, I just needed to show you the real numbers.
Okay.
But back to,
Here's my left.
just on that number, the 17,000,
Yep.
that 2022 number, $2,700 for a coat, I just got that today. So when I calculated that number, I was going by like $1,800 for a coat and $1,400 for
Well,
pants.
if there's an
So-
adjustment that needs to be made in there for the 5 sets, get us back the numbers, but my suggestion would just be cut it back by 1 set.
'Cause I just
In
did
which
the-
case, you're still gonna save,
I just did the math on 5,000 times 5 sets is 25 grand alone right there. So, yeah, we can trim it, I don't have a problem trimming it, but
Well,
just-
I'm not trying to keep you from getting gear, I'm just saying, let's try to see if something can be purchased this year
we can't
instead.
get gear right now anyway, it's not
Yeah.
a budget problem,
Yeah.
just can't get it.
Alright, if you can't
I-
get it, but you've got money, according to
we-
Humphrey, you've got money
yeah.
left from this year's budget.
Yeah.
Is there any way
You can
of,
if you don't have it spent, you can encumber the money for the
What
uniforms
do I have
for,
left in that?
in that
okay,
particular
that
one
was
right
my
now.
question, because we cannot encumber the school district.
Well, the
If I
thing
had
is
it on
about
order,
encumbrances is supposed to be for that type of thing.
Okay.
So right now, under your uniforms, cause you had 20,350,
Mhm.
and you've spent 64, you wanna come over here and see it, I
No,
can show you.
no, I was
But
gonna-
6403, so you still got,
I have 2 sets of gear on
excuse
order.
me, you got 13,946 remaining.
And I have 2 sets of gear currently on order at this price.
So you could probably get one more set.
I can
out of
maybe
it.
get one more set, and that's if I don't need to buy anything else.
Well, that's all I'm getting at, and I was sitting there looking at it saying, if you can get one more set out of this year, you could go to 4 for next year
But
for
that'll
now.
only, if I do that, I only have 2 on order for this year's budget.
Yeah.
So that'll only still give me 3. And
And leave 2 in for next year.
It leaves you for 4 next year is what I was
so I need
saying.
to buy 5. I'd like,
Alright, but 3 plus 2 equals 5.
Yeah,
I'm
that would be
confused
5,
now.
that would be 5 in 2 years. What I, to be sustainable for
Okay.
the number of people we have on the department,
Okay.
That would be 7 and 2.
divided by the life expectancy of the gear, comes to 5 or 6 sets a year. If I don't buy a set for a year, we'll probably be alright. If I don't buy 3 sets every year for the next 4 years, we're gonna come to the end of the line and realize we now need 15 sets of gear at.
No,
so
I was just
to
thinking if we
yeah.
could encumber any money, because you said you got,
I will
them
stretch
on
every penny
order?
out of that budget
Yeah.
line right there that I
okay,
possibly
I'm
can.
sure you do.
And then if the number goes back to 20 or 21 or 22, I will order however much I can and then ask for the rest the next year. But this is what we do though, honestly, is
Oh, I know.
I don't mean we, I mean collectively as a town, you do the math, you figure out how much something costs divided by the life expectancy of it. Capital reserves is a perfect example. And then, oh, we'll cut $5,000 out of it. Well, $5,000 times 5 years is 25,000, and then you come to 5 years when you need it, and you're, oh, I'm missing 25,000. Oh, we only took $5,000 out. Yeah, but you did it for 5 years, and that's the problem that you'll run into with this particular line.
I hear you. I do.
And again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying I'm not willing to bring this back.
I'll donate a couple, how's that? Alright. Never mind.
We can get the suits at half off for you.
Oh, shut up.
In all honesty, this
Take such a piece.
I had to call them 2 times today, actually, because I didn't believe that number right there. And that's not the 10-1 price increase. That's the stuff that we ordered.
You know, geez, I'm sorry, but inflation's gonna eat everything up.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say, if
what-
there,
That's why
There's-
we're trying to be as
Yeah, I
mindful of
mean,
this
there-
now as we can.
Yeah,
there's nothing that's not going up on a daily basis at this point in time right now. Look at gas prices.
Yeah.
20 cents in 24 hours. You know, it's not that nobody believes you. It's that, you know, we're just trying to figure out, you know, if we
So-
can buy whatever this year and, you know, next year to make up the difference. But
I've got 3 or 4 emails right here that I hadn't read yet that had to do with that $2,700 price that I questioned. So I don't know what the new price is, but it doesn't change the conversation a whole lot. It's still, but if you look at everything else, it goes up incrementally, and that just doesn't. So I'll have more information on that. It really doesn't change my bottom line number because I didn't use the $2,700 to come up with this, but anyway. We could skip that. Contract services is a $2,000 increase. Is basically, if we go to
Page 12.
page 12. Couple things happened here. We switched mutual aid districts from Ospey Valley to Seacoast Chiefs, and that saved us $2,200. And then I got rid of one of our computer, basically we get notifications on our phones. We had 2 different programs, eDispatch and I Am Responding. They did 2 different things at the time. One of the programs picked up the technology of the other one, so we were able to get rid of eDispatch. So, with that being said, a couple of contracts or prices went up incrementally. We purchased or we contracted whatever the word may be, scheduling software to help with
E-schedule.
e-schedule. Basically, the way we had been doing it is everybody would text me their availability. I'd write it all down on a piece of paper. I'd sit down in a Word document and I'd look at that, scratch it out, write it in, and it took me a day to do the schedule, and it was usually wrong, and people said that they can't work the next day, and so on and so forth. So the e-schedule program, and the other part of that was we got rid of the timekeeping program that we had at Town Hall. So we were left with nothing at the fire station. Well, we could have used the old one, but we would have been paying for it anyway. So we got one that was all encompassing. It does scheduling, payroll, and like notification. So if a shift opens up, somebody can go in, sign off the shift. It sends a mass text and email out to everybody to help pick up that shift. So it's really nice to have everything on one platform. And then we've been paying hourly for IT services for years, so I contacted Back Bay this year and got a quote to add the fire department to the town's contract. And Humphrey, if you want, at some point, look at what we spent for Lenhart Systems Incorporated.
I'll have to get that from Brittany.
And I haven't done it yet, I probably could, but my guess is it's probably more than $2,400.
For the IT before, yeah, now you're down to, Lenhart, you said contract is 155.
No.
Is that's the
So
one
that
you're
was the
talking
company,
about?
but that was just for off-site backup.
Okay,
It was 155. So he's had a contract with them, and he's sometimes called them, and he's giving me a quote too. So,
Okay.
but I think it makes sense to stay on the same company as
under Back Bay.
the rest of the town.
Well, the only reason I'm saying is I went with what you had, and are you still gonna use Lenhart Systems for contract issue? Because you got them down here on your list for
Got 155.
155, so
That's just for an off-site backup. It was a third-party
okay.
backup.
You had them
and-
before, that's why I'm asking,
Yeah,
I'm just
and
saying.
basically, we paid them and they paid the company, so
Okay.
that 155 won't go away.
No, that's
So
fine.
it's just a matter of who we write the check to.
No, I just wanted to make sure, yeah,
And
because I
Sonic
added your
Wall
other
is new?
stuff in here.
So Back
What's
Bay
that?
doesn't do
Sonic
that?
Wall is new.
Back Bay probably will. Sonic Wall is not new. I think it was one of those things that we had to pay for every couple of years.
Yeah.
Or we got it initially. It's the firewall fire station.
Yeah, I know exactly what it is.
Yeah. We got it initially and then we had to pay for it, so I added it recently, but we had it all along. It was
Okay.
never accounted for.
Okay.
I don't think it was I'd have to go back and look. I don't think it's an annual thing.
Yeah, that's what we need, that'd be the only other, I took your breakdown, because now, and this will be going out to just everyone in here to understand, because I'm gonna actually be sending this out, instead of, as far as the BOS goes, instead of having Chris Jacobs, because right now I'm running with it, just to keep it in one place so it's not mixed up. So, when I send it back out to you, there's a new, under the fire, you got the separate contract sheet. I put your uniform stuff in that you gave us. I put all your equipment stuff. These guys know that because I showed them that last week, but that's new to you guys seeing it too. So it makes it a lot easier for us to keep track of what's in there, and then all you gotta do is edit it year to year. So you did have that in there. It's just make sure that the contract information's right.
Okay.
So that came out to 19,577 with everything you gave us, and that's what,
And I rounded down to 19.4.
yeah, well,
I think I was planning on not using the Sonic Wall this coming year, so I just rounded it down.
yeah, so, but I think I left it in there as what it calculated out to,
Okay.
rather than try to mess around with $177. So, and that did, and it's contract anyway, so it's covered under the default with the
Right.
contract
Right.
information, so.
All right.
Do we want to go to electric?
No,
So I'll just,
Or
That's-
heat.
I can, let me, before you even waste your time on that,
There's
I'm still
nothing.
gonna have another conversation that Chris and I are gonna have a meeting to talk with the lawyer, because when I asked the magic question was, okay, I know per the RSA, 4013, that electric cannot be considered a contract. Okay. So, Chris went and asked if we could consider it a contract, and it's like, that's not how I wanted. It's an obligated expense, one we are required to pay, and under that RSA, any obligated expenses can be carried into a default budget. So, and the reason I bring that up is our current budget for all electric, of course, you got the highest one, yours in the sewer department because of the running the motors. But it's 51,000 and we're on track to spend around 61,000. The projections for next year based on the new rates would be 72,000. What I'm trying to get and find out if we can do it, I know we can't project the 72, but we have concurred, $61,000 worth of expense. can we use that as an obligated default budget? Because at least it shows what we've spent this year, so that's gonna be coming up here in the next week or two.
And that would help
That
a
would help
lot.
offset some of the things to help us, because right now, we have to
Let us
account
know.
for $20-some-odd thousand increase,
So-
and that takes away from other
This
things.
is how I did it, I put the usage from the electric.
Yeah,
bill,
and I remember you explaining it, and
Yep.
you did very well with that.
And then, it
Yeah,
came
it's
out
right
to-
in his little handout,
Yeah.
both stations.
So I spared you with the monthly thing for the whole thing, but I
Yeah.
just left the totals on the bottom, so. I don't know, I did it a couple different ways too, and again, I didn't have a full year of the new rate, and I came up with 25 when I calculated it a different way, so I just left it, but 28's what I do when I,
Your salary, it ends up right around 25 when I used all the current calculations,
yeah.
it's pretty close, yeah.
And he,
yeah, I get that right
we're
here.
looking to do the same thing, Humphrey,
What's that?
as far as hoping to add it to the default?
I'm hoping that we
I
can
actually have a
add
contract with-
obligated cost.
That's an actual contract.
The
Okay.
contracts we can.
Okay,
So
The
should be able to-
heat, the oil and all that for this and the gas, the propane gas is covered. That, that's what I have yet to figure out. Of course, what they were talking about is when they originally wrote some of these laws, a lot of this stuff, they didn't consider contract stuff when you were paying things off, but they also weren't expecting somebody to go, hey, we're doubling your rate.
yeah,
So,
So with this one, I put a $3,000 increase, so this is the new contract for $12,250, and then last year's contract for $10,600. And they adjust it by the gallons we use, so last year was 54, this year we used, or they averaged it out and they figured we'd use 5,000. So that's the increase plus a little bit for the oil.
yeah.
no, that one,
And that one's not as hard to swallow as a
No.
lot of them, so.
And it's surprising that, we get a really good deal from Eastern,
Yeah,
honestly.
I was gonna say Eastern did a pretty good job, so.
So $325 on the telephone line, so that's the station lines, sorry, $325 increase. Station phone lines, breeze line, internet, and iPads in engine 6, both ambulances, and we're gonna put one in the command car, which used to have one, it came out and went in the backup ambulance when we started using Tempsys. And Tempsys on the iPad, so our medical records software is all remote on iPads now. We used to walk in with a clipboard and fill out everything. Now everybody walks in with an iPad, so that's the reason we need more availability of them.
Page is the telephone on.
I, 15,
telephone.
I have a question for you, Hudspot?
Yes. Why do we
Because
have?
The
we are,
telephone's not
no,
covered
we are
under default,
comparing
right?
our budget, obviously.
I didn't increase the default because I
And-
didn't.
Found out
know the
we
information.
have maybe 6 or 7 or 8 hotspots in town, none of which are working, that we set up for remote learning. Don't ask me what happened to them, but we've been paying for them. And they don't work, so,
My kids don't have one.
what?
So they're not at my house.
No, they're at like, the corner of this street and whatever, wherever they are, I don't know where they are. But are yours working? Out of total curiosity, I saw that.
Yeah,
and
they
it
work
said-
great. We've never had a problem with them. We have one in each ambulance, and the cardiac monitors are tied to them, and we have to be able to transmit the EKGs. That's what we have
Okay,
them for.
alright, so yours are,
And we can't
They're in the equipment.
We can't use, the iPads have service on them as well. We tried to connect the iPads to the cardiac monitors, but they didn't play well together. So that's why they have
okay,
Are your hotspots through, Verizon? Yeah, they're not through Breeze Line, yours are probably through Breeze Line.
I have no clue where we got ours, but I
Yeah,
know we've been paying for
more
them
than
this
likely
year.
yours are through Breeze Line and not through,
Yep, we've been paying for them and they don't work.
So all our Verizon
Honey.
stuff is like $89 a month, and that's 2
Yours-
hotspots and 3 iPads.
Yours is a hard
That's not
spot,
bad.
that is a mobile.
yeah.
The stuff you paid for wasn't a mobile hotspot.
Oh, okay, alright, ours hotspot, I'm going, no, it's a hotspot, not a hard spot.
Well, no, hard locations.
Hard hotspot.
So I don't know if you guys remember, but I was perplexed with why diesel fuel hadn't gone above the budget this year. I figured it out, but vehicle fuel did. So I used the average monthly bill, multiplied it by 12, came out with $4,992. And rounded up to $5,000 for vehicle fuel. The diesel fuel, the reason The reason that didn't go over is because through fluctuation over the years, at one point, the ambulance fuel was in it, as well as the fire department vehicles. And then diesel prices went up, and instead of increasing the budget, we moved the ambulance fuel to the revolving account. And then diesel prices dropped again a couple years ago, and we never reduced the budget. We kept the budget the same, just because thinking it would fluctuate, and we might as well leave it level. So we don't have to increase it because we left it high from the last time diesel prices were high. Equipment maintenance, 85 from 75. I just looked at Humphrey sheet on historical usage, and I think we're closer to 85 a year. And obviously, just like everything else, costs of repairs are going up. So no mad science behind that one. Equipment purchase, again, I just increased that based on historical usage, our needs, and inflation. This is one of the ones where we could put a warrant article on for some of this stuff, potentially. But again, I'm afraid to, like, if we wanted to buy the battery operated Jaws of Life, it's been on my list to purchase for 3 years, and we just haven't had the money because other things have come up. It's one of those things that if I have money, I will end up buying it out of the equipment budget, but hasn't gotten there yet. Hose is another thing,
Yeah, we've been
plucking away
having
at that.
bad hose for, ever
It's,
since I've been
hose
around.
has a 10-year standard. We have some stuff from the 90s still.
Yeah.
And we're just cycling out the older stuff. When it fails, we take it out of service. And it's just gonna be a continual cost. We've replaced all the 4-inch finally. And that was the original reason we bumped this line up from like 11 to 16,000, but now we need to start plucking away at the other stuff. And that stuff hasn't gotten any cheaper either. So to replace, I have $10,920, but that's gonna be broken up incrementally over a couple of years. Just like the 4-inch, we bought 1,000 feet a year for 4 years until we replaced all of it. And then, yeah, it's only good for 10 years, so by the time
Well, I don't
by the
want you
time
to
we get
come
done
to
the
my
2.5,
house.
we'll be back on the
I
4-inch.
don't want you coming to my house and have to spring a leak somewhere along the line, please, thank you.
So that's all I had for
Sorry.
budget lines that were increased or had a,
So the big thing is the salary, right?
yeah, and then I have this too, just ambulance revolving, income versus expenditures. The green line was the last time we bought an ambulance,
What year was that?
17. 2022 year to date, that, the blue line is the income, and that's obviously, and the red line is the expenses, so those are operating expenses, and we haven't charged any staff to that line this year for the revolving account. It's all charged to the budget for tracking purposes. So that's why the blue line is finally above the red line. But at the same time, you can see there's room to put some of those expenses back in the revolving account.
You hired a new, I don't know, knock on your door and try to get the money people, what do you call those people?
Collection
agent.
Collection
Oh,
agencies,
yes,
thank
yes,
you.
Um,
Are they getting any better? Okay.
better than the last one, but, so if we don't use, if we don't charge wages to the revolving account, I'm guessing we'll be around $40,000. And so this is just a breakdown roughly. January 1st, the balance was $62,317. The fourth quarter payment was made from 2021. And again, that would have been $40,000 more than that, but the selectmen at the time charged $40,000 to the budget that would have gone to this $18,000 number.
What?
They basically, at the end of the year, they voted to save the revolving account and put $40,000 to the fire department budget, which overspent the fire department budget. But that was a vote of the selectmen at the time. Instead of taking the last $62,000 out of the revolving account, they decided to overexpend the fire department budget. And then ever since then, it's been charged to the budget, and we just gotta figure out where it's gonna go at the end of the year. But the current balance as of today, or yesterday when I did this, was $192,000. That doesn't include the second or third quarter expenses, but year to date, we've only spent $23,000 out of that account. So take 20 off of that, 192, we're sitting around 160. And income, we're at 133. So I'm multiplying that out, looking like we'll be just under 200 again. And then the balance that we need by January of 2025, for new ambulance is 350. So, and again, I can get into this more and more if you guys wanna dig into it deeper, but, and then that's the summary of everything. I know you guys probably have a million things you wanna do, but, anybody know the password for the Wi-Fi?
Right up
Right
there.
there.
Milton, New Hampshire, capital M, capital N, capital H.
And you can tell me you don't wanna look at this right now, but I have a website I can, Milton Cast, right? There's a million things we can look at, and I'm not gonna get too into it, but the top line shows our estimated revenue of 217. This is year to date, and basically there's a bunch of formulas they use to come up with all this stuff. What I was gonna show you is monthly deposit trends. There's absolutely no consistency to it.
No, it's whether or not people can pay their bills. It's like, do I buy groceries or do I pay for the ambulance that I just needed?
Typically,
Also varies by calls.
Yeah.
yeah, so that's right here. Trips.
Medicare doesn't pay anything, so.
No, I know they
I
don't.
can show you that too. So that's trips by month. And then
But
that's
then
broken-
again, Peg, my insurance doesn't pay for it either. It's completely out of pocket for me.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Depends on the insurance
And then
company.
same thing like down here, ALS calls versus BLS calls, they pay differently, so if that's different, that changes everything.
What's the difference between ALS and BLS?
So ALS is like if you get an IV,
Advanced
any medications, that type of stuff, and BLS is back of the
Basic
ambulance
stuff.
and
Is
put a
what?
Band-Aid on you.
Basic
What
life
Band-Aid?
support and advanced life support.
For what, $20?
Oh,
Difference, $20?
For Band-Aid?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, so they charge in the hospital?
This one, then I'll get out of here.
What's the average cost that's billed
Alright, let me see if I can find that real quick. So this is the collection.
against what gets paid?
Yeah, this is, I have that, so right here, look at this one. Average monthly payments by deposit is 12,000. Average monthly gross charges is 50,000, and average monthly net charge is 25,000. So 25% is what we collect, basically. So basically, the gross charges, our rate times the service. The net charges after all contractual allowances, so Medicare, we bill $1,500, Medicare pays $300. So that comes right off the top of between the 50 and the 25.
Sorry.
And then the 25 is, the difference between the 25 and the 12 is the people who don't have insurance. So, let's see if I can find that real quick.
Do you know what's sad is Medicare does not pay much,
No,
but
Medicare,
Medicare,
Medicaid pays even less.
I know, but what I'm thinking is, who's on Medicare? old people.
But we can't balance bill them.
I know, but who
Yeah.
uses an ambulance more often?
Oh,
A 25-year-old or a 70-year-old?
We're just lucky they don't, you know, make us pay them to take people. Seriously. I work in pharmacy, I dealt with the Medicare thing.
I know, but it's like, you know,
yeah.
I didn't realize how bad it was
It's bad.
until all of a sudden I had to go on it.
so I might not be able to find it. Somewhere in here there's a breakdown.
And
Oh, here we go. Maybe. No. There's our rates right here. Average rates.
and so you charge per mileage as well as a base rate?
Yep.
Okay.
And the bottom right here is the mile. Oh, this is the average trip cost. It's
Okay.
over here. Does it have the actual? That doesn't show the base rate for the mileage.
Speaking of mileage, do you keep track of your vehicle mileage and hours like the police do?
No, I mean we can get it anytime. We don't track it on a regular basis.
It's a maintenance type of thing. It's good to have that information readily available so we understand the maintenance cycle. I know we gotta do the same thing with highway and that and understand the vehicles.
Every time they go to highway, this is what I was looking for. So, commercial insurance, 35% of our calls. Medicare is 35%. Self-pay is 21%. So, the self-pay are the ones that you're not getting that money,
Well,
which is
yeah.
historically speaking, based on all this stuff, just other would be like car insurance. But these two things right here, 70% of the call volume, commercial insurance, and they don't. I think the commercial insurance collection rate is close to 80%. Medicare is higher than that, but they're only paying 25% of the bill.
I was gonna say, I have pretty good medical insurance and my medical insurance does not cover
Yeah,
ambulance, period.
that's unfortunate. So again, I can keep playing with this all day long. You guys have a meeting to go to.
Yeah.
But
Well, thank you.
it's all here. So if you really want to understand,
I have one question, Chief, I've got to ask.
yeah,
On the contract services, do you really need that e-schedule?
no, we just got rid of it. Oh, e-schedule? Yes.
Yes. You can't do without it.
No, we don't have anybody to do payroll. If we do,
You didn't say that before.
yes, I did.
I don't remember hearing you
I
say
said it's all payroll.
I thought it was just scheduling people coming into work.
It's payroll. So they get put on the schedule, they submit availability, they get put on the schedule. If they can't attend the shift, that's how they call out of the shift. Well, they call me and then they go on the thing and take themselves off the schedule, which then sends out an email and a text message to everybody else. At the end of the week, it has a punch clock in it, so they punch in, punch out. It all goes into a time card, which is a different module in that, and then I approve it all, download it, email it to Brittany, and she enters it into the computer.
Yeah, you left that part out.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
I thought I said payroll, I didn't.
Yeah, no, all you said was scheduling. Yeah, you went from doing it on an Excel spreadsheet to this
No,
format.
I thought I mentioned that we had a program at Town Hall, and they did away with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did say
You
that.
did.
Yeah.
You did mention the word
Yeah,
payroll,
you
but
mentioned it. I didn't
not the
know.
whole
Yeah.
bit.
Well, it's the time clock that they punch in and punch out on, which
Yeah.
records their time, and
Yeah.
then their hours go onto a time card, which I have to go in and approve, download it,
Automated system.
send it off.
anybody else have any questions, and other questions for the chief?
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
so long.
No, it's good. It helps us better understand, so I greatly appreciate you coming and your time today.
No problem.
Thank you.
Anytime you need me again, if you want anything more specific on anything. And like I said, I know that number's too big, so I'm willing to figure out ways to, ultimately what I'd like, I'll be perfectly honest with you, what I wanted last year and I thought was gonna happen, but then nobody did anything, was figure out how much is left after the default and then just put that in there. So every year, we can get closer and closer to where we need to be. If we figure out that there's $100,000 available, let's put $100,000 in there instead of 230,000.
Or 99,000.
Or whatever that number may be. I agree, it needs to stay below default. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
Nobody will get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, with what I projected, the most we're gonna get out of this is about $16,000-$17,000 under the default, and that's if everything lines up with what we're talking about. So it's not like there's some massive amount in there, but where we may get something back out of this is if we can increase the default budgets for things like electric,
Yeah.
because that's, right now, we have to absorb a 40% increase, and I'd like to try to get that narrowed down to a 20% if we can. You know, every little bit
Because that's what's
there.
hosing us right now,
Yeah.
right? Everything is
There's-
overexpended because of that.
There's a lot of things that we just can't increase the default on, and even though the costs have gone up.
And I'm sure we're not the only town that has it, so maybe they'll.
Oh, heck no,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, they're calling special meetings in a lot of different places as a result.
What about, what is it, Wex and the state for gas prices?
No, that's covered under contract, so that
Okay,
part
alright,
of
'cause I
it
was
we
gonna
can,
say that is.
that part we can
that is-
adjust.
okay.
Yeah.
Alright,
For
good.
Is there-
some
was there
of
any
that,
way
but we
towns
can't
can-
increase all of it. No, the contract piece, we don't have it on all of them, I'm sorry, because the fuel is a 2,500 default, and we need $5,000, so no, I can't increase that part of it, I'm sorry. I
Is there
said
a
the wrong
way a
thing.
bunch?
The fuel contracts for the buildings is, but it's not a contract under WEX, the rate changes.
Yeah, I know, but we have a contract with them though to purchase.
No, the rate changes. We have an agreement with them for what the rate is, but we don't have, you can't project what it's gonna cost you for the year and increase the default.
Oh, yeah.
It's the fuel, it's the heating fuel that we can, not the.
The state doesn't do a contract any longer
No.
with communities
Okay.
for their fuel. Their fuel is whatever they set the rate at for
Yeah.
that.
And if you look up here, that's why I didn't make the change here.
Thank you.
See this here? The default was 2,500, but the
Right.
need is 5,000. And what we need to figure out, make sure, and again, that goes based on what we spent what we approved last year.
I guess the only request I had going forward is I know that there needs to be cuts, but I'd rather work with you guys and
Well, we'd rather
make
you work with us.
recommendations. I know last year,
Just cut.
well, there was things that cut that I got upset about because they didn't make sense, you know what I mean?
I'll send you what I have here, and I can show you right now, Nick, while you're looking. My suggestion, and that we're working on here, but this is not the team, when the team makes the decision. The 335, I still put an increase in from 106 to 110, because that covers roughly the employee pay plan piece of it, okay? So that would take 225 out of there. If you take 225 out, that would adjusts the Social Security and Medicare. I told you about the reduction. It wasn't 5,000. That was one uniform based at what you said gave us for 3,400. So it wasn't.
Whatever we can sneak out of it, that's where I need to be, but again, I know
That's
that we need to-
44. It actually was 4,400 based on that. So,
And I wouldn't even, honestly, just give me the number and I'll figure out how I'm gonna spend it.
Yeah.
Not to be an asshole.
well, I'm just letting you know that was it. Yeah,
Come on,
that's,
Nick.
that was broadcast, so don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
that's fine.
So, out of that though, like I said, those are the items. And I will send you the breakdown so you can tell us. As a matter of fact, when you get this, you can go to uniforms and you can see I put down what you did.
Yeah.
And I said reduce 4.4K. I said reduce from 5 sets to 4 sets was a suggestion. And maybe duty uniforms to 3,000 instead of 4,000. That was a suggestion.
And you know, honestly, what I would do,
Drop the computer.
drop the computer,
At
fine.
least you didn't hit anybody with it.
I would probably, if I needed the gear, I'd buy the gear, and I'd probably transfer some of the duty uniforms to the revolving account because it's ambulance crews where.
Okay. Well,
I
again,
would do something like that.
If I
Again,
send
we're
this
trying
back
to-
to you, you can give it,
yeah.
you can give us the numbers and try to figure it out. That's what I'm trying to do with highway too, is work through the numbers.
And I just, historically, this is what we've done. We said,
Yep.
oh, you wanna cut it $5,000, well, that's fine. We still need it, we're gonna buy it out of the revolving account. And that's how for 10 years, we did that. to
Yeah.
Keep the budgets level, and we're trying to go back the other way.
The only other thing I'm gonna ask for you to give us a breakdown, because you gave us the numbers. like fire attack hose was $4,000. It's, if you give me quantities, that helps us understand what the individual costs are too. Because I know, and all I did was put one in there for now to carry what you gave us for numbers, okay? But that's why I'm saying how many, you know, in here, and that's kind of a repeat on those things. I understand what the jaws are, that is one. But, and you had the 4 Motorola pagers, but I didn't have numbers on like flashlights and adapters and those things. If you've got a rough idea on what it is.
I don't have a specific amount, it was items that we may replace throughout the year. And
Well, if that's the case, then we can leave it the way it is right now. It's just, it'd be good if you had numbers.
I don't specifically need any like flashlights, for example. I might buy 3 pagers, but I might buy 5. It depends on what we need. If we put new people on and 2 guys at the same time say, hey, my pager's broke, the older ones you can't send out for repairs anymore. So it fluctuates throughout the year, and that's why that list is pretty accurate as far as things we may need, and that dollar figure is pretty accurate to what we spend in a year. But very rarely does it actually go by that. That's why a lot of those things are carried over year to year, because we never actually get to replace them. So it's hard for me to put a specific number on it.
Just letting you know, that's why but what we didn't have before and what we have now is, this is in the budget so that when anyone here or anyone else in town goes to, all right, are you gonna come back to the page? It's, right now I know what this is, it's a memory issue here, but hang on a minute. I'm running out of CPU. Yep. Clear, thank you. All right, it brings it in, that's what the blue links are. So you can go to uniforms, you can go to contract services, you can go to equipment purchase. I've got that on all the different departments, and it's just a matter of now being able to go look at it. All your contract services were there as to what you gave us. So this is just to let you know that that's what that was, and I put the notes down. I've marked off what you had. Penguin Management e-dispatch canceled, you know, Zoom, so we knew that was there last year. It won't be there next year, but at least the notes are in there. I also identified that you had put these in for items, and then you had actually reduced the total by 827, so I put that note in. That was what you had given us when you, and this.
And again, that's because these are all the things I may potentially buy or would buy if I had the money,
Yeah.
but I know that we can't.
But here's what I did.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing this year is, all the department head requests are what you gave us originally. If you're gonna make some adjustments, we'll make the adjustments to the department head piece. That's what I was trying to get at, as opposed to, that way there's no confusion as to where we started and where we end up,
Like there's no
because what'll
record.
happen, God, I'm not gonna swear, but I wish this thing wouldn't jump.
Gosh darn.
Anyways, so
It's a trend.
you've got, right here is under column X, has got all the department head proposals that went through. Right now, this isn't the budget committee. This was where we're starting with the BOS stuff, okay? But this was just what I had put out until we talked to the BOS, so any adjustments are in there. So you can understand what the changes are. If you look at it, you can see that that's roughly what it is, and then we'll give you what we end up with here as the budget committee. And yes, by all means, I'd like it to be, you know, you make the adjustments to what you wanna do, but if you, I understand you're gonna live with what you end up with, that's not what the point
Yeah.
was. But if there's something you can adjust and make those changes ahead of time, that saves anybody in here having to make some changes, so.
Yeah, because the last thing I want to do is say, here you go, Nick, here's $500,000. Now you figure out what you're going to do with it.
Right.
That I don't want, none of us want to do that, you know?
That's not our job. I mean, it's, you know.
I want to, you know, we want to see, you know, where there is a little give. And I know there's not a ton of give, but I know that there's no give when it comes to heat. There's no give when it comes to electricity. There's no give when it comes to fuel.
Salaries for the most
Salaries,
part,
that,
except,
you know, things like that. I know there's no give on those. So, and you know best where there might be.
Yep, and like I said, and then I'll go. I promise. So basically, Humphrey, you're gonna keep the department head request in there as a separate column before.
we used to
because
say
historically-
department head BOS, but at the
Right.
same time, when that was done, you guys always did a presentation, worked it out with the BOS before it came here.
Because that's why I need to put the numbers in there that are real. And then that number will be kept. So when I come back for ask for 25,000 for uniforms next year, you can be like, oh, it was 20. I'm like, no, I've been asking for 25 for 5 years now. But
Now
that-
it's gonna-
nowhere in that has that ever been reflected.
No,
what we
that's
actually
why I
asked.
wanted to make sure it's
Yeah.
done from this point going forward, because we didn't have the request in there.
It's like my third full-time guy that never made it anywhere last year that I put in there, that number just disappeared before it even made it to.
yeah.
It's a work in progress. Hey, this has been better than it ever was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Hey, Nick.
You too.
See you, Nick.
Good night, Bob.
All right.
Uh-oh. Are you up?
Are you just hanging, just visiting?
Well, while Chief Kraus is here, does anybody have any questions for him with regards to his budget?
No, it's fine.
You're the least of our problem children. You got, no,
Always.
you did amazing, and we appreciate that. Are you coming to tell us that you need like 50,000 more? Thank you.
Only 25.
When I was here at your last meeting, I said I'd come at your next meeting, see if you guys had questions, so.
Well, Chief, I'm gonna come out with a question. Okay, and I'm thinking that, I can't see the, can you roll up the police department? a little
That's
bit?
right here.
Can you, a little more?
You,
Oh,
well,
the incentive line, I think. There's 5,000. We have a pay scale with retention. Is it necessary to keep that?
Yes.
Well,
The educational incentive line has
Oh, yeah,
nothing
that's
to
what I
do
was
with
looking
pay salary. The educational incentive is
This
for
one
the
right here.
officers who get a degree prior to coming to work for the town of Milton, and we give them an educational incentive each year for having that degree over the top of the officers that do not have that degree. So it is a benefit to the officers who have a degree that come and work for the town of Milton.
Okay, my problem with that, we don't keep anybody long enough.
well, you said
Sure,
you
but
only
you-
pay that out in
We pay it
segments.
at the end of the year.
Yeah.
At the end, but I'm sorry.
So you have to work a full year for us, you have to be off probation, and it's a benefit to that officer that comes and works for us that does have a degree that they went and earned on their own and paid with their own money to get that degree. So you as a taxpayer in the town of Milton are reaping the benefits of that officer's degree.
Is,
So if an officer goes and gets a psychology degree and comes to work here and has a bachelor in psychology, and also becomes to be a police officer, that officer has a little more insight than an officer who just graduates high school and comes to work for the town of Milton. And I'm not saying that those, one officer is better than the other, because they both have benefits to the town of Milton, but the officer that's coming in with the education benefit is going to be looking for more things and more money
Mhm.
in that avenue, because they have a higher level of understanding, is the expectation.
Why would they stay here for 5 and then go someplace else to get more?
It's just paid out
He's
as a
not staying
bonus.
here for 5, it's a singular one-time
Yeah,
stipend.
it's a one-side stipend, yeah.
So they get paid it at one time each year. So it's not a bonus, it's not a retention type bonus or anything like that. It's for them having that degree.
I'm just looking for some place to get, there's gonna be some pain in these budgets, and a lot of people are not gonna like it.
well, I wanna speak up for a moment, because I know we talk, I'm the liaison for him. And if you look, he has kept his whole budget under 2%, at this point. So, and I'm gonna bring it up under the total, so it's more visible, because it shows the total plan here. If you look at his budget here in the bottom line, he is at, his total budget went up from the default 0.33%, okay, with a 0.8% overall increase from last year. So he's at 1.13% increase. When we were asked, when the town administrator from the BOS direction was, we need to keep this under 2%, tax cap wise and everything else, he went and cut his down almost half from that. So that was why we didn't even look at any additional changes from there, because he had brought that back,
I was
kept
just
that
asking
down.
a question, I was not gonna actually go down with it.
Oh, and it's
But the
nothing
thing is,
against your
though-
questions, Bob, it was just bringing up why that was that
Well,
way.
I thought about the pay scale, and then also, we get retention, why do we need another scale?
Well, I guess I'll answer part of your question, Bob, with just an explanation.
All right,
So, the retention plan that passed.
yes.
So, what should be in my budget this year should be putting me where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So if I come in and put me where I'm supposed to be in that retention scale,
It's 20,000.
it's a $15,000 increase just in my salary line, and it's another $5,000 increase in retirement line.
Okay.
So I didn't put that in the budget because I know where the budget's gonna be next year. Now, I can tell you right now, I'm already at almost 4,000 hours of work for this town this year. Okay? Yes, I do have an agreement with the town. Yes, they are paying me for my patrol hours, but paying me for my patrol hours doesn't put me at my house.
Right.
Okay? Doesn't put me with my family. So when I have officers and they start working all those hours, and then I come to those officers and say, hey, yeah, we have an educational incentive as well. The educational incentive is, thank you for your bachelor's degree. We usually give you $850 for your bachelor's degree, but we're gonna take that away this year, so we can decrease the budget by $5,000, which in my $1 million budget for the police department is less than a penny of my budget. It's not gonna help me in hiring people when I'm competing against agencies that are offering $10,000 sign-on bonuses.
I
When
was
I'm
just gonna
competing
say,
against
that's
agencies that
my
are
question.
offering $15,000 sign-on bonuses and are paying either 50 cents to $1 more per hour. They've all increased their starting rates. We haven't. We are now in an employee retention plan that was built in 2019, passed last year, and started to start paying out this year. And we don't reevaluate it again for another 5 years.
It's already
So by the
passed.
time we get to reevaluate that plan in 5 years,
Yep.
we're gonna be 5 years behind everyone else. And when we're 5 years behind everyone else, we're not only playing catch up, but we're just a training ground.
Yeah.
And that's what unfortunately we are going to turn back into as a small community.
This was probably the worst year I've ever seen the police department in 2 full-time and 3 part-time. That's the worst I've ever seen since I've been on this committee.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, when's it gonna reverse itself? There was a time we had 8 officers and even
Well,
part-time.
that's all the
But
more
that's-
reason why
That's
to,
across
We
the
need
board
to-
for law
to make sure we
enforcement.
keep what we can to help incentivize some of this to come in.
If you look at law enforcement across the country, you're gonna see every single agency in the country is shorthanded, and every single agency across the country is down probably 50% or down large numbers at large points of the year. I mean, some agencies, the agency next to us at one point was down 15 officers. So, when we have agencies that normally don't lose people and are not training agencies, and they're losing people, and they're losing people in mass exodus, it's a nationwide problem, it's not just a Milton problem. And if it was just a Milton problem and I could throw money at it, I'd come in here to the Board of Selectmen and say, throw money at it and we'll fix it. But it's not. It's people don't wanna be police officers anymore because you had 4 years of nothing but bad language towards police officers.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a thankless job, unfortunately. And I think that our police force and you have done an amazing job with continuing to serve us with very few, people. And I personally want to thank you for that because it's not an easy thing that you guys have been put, forth to do. So, and I appreciate that immensely
I mean, this year.
as a citizen
We had
and
2 officers, and I've never had this problem. We had two officers get out of full-time law enforcement.
Wow.
See,
So when we have officers leaving full-time law enforcement, not to retire, just leaving full-time law enforcement to go into other avenues, that's where we start to run into issues. And then you have officers who leave agencies to go closer to home. You have officers who leave agencies to get different benefits or different packages or promotions. And you have officers who leave agencies because they don't like me. It is what it is. I am who I am. Everybody who's known me for my 22 years of being in this town knows I'm very black and white. They know when my cruiser pulls up, you know what's there. I'm not someone that's a surprise.
Yeah.
When you see who has arrived. We know what's gonna happen. I'm very fair, but I am very black and white. Either there was a crime committed or there wasn't a crime committed.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot in between. And if there wasn't a crime committed, have a nice day. If there was, then we're gonna deal with what we have to deal with.
yes.
But some people don't like that, and some officers don't like to handle that. And if they don't wanna handle that, then they move on to other agencies. But right now, you've said it 4 or 5 times as you've been sitting here. The employee really does have the upper hand because so many places are hiring. So if we don't offer something to those employees that is a benefit to that employee, why are they gonna come work for you?
Okay.
We
The
have
other
the
thing,
same
the other.
problem with teachers too, by the way. I mean, the same thing, we offer them no incentive to come to Milton, and he mentioned the abuse. Yeah, I mean, teachers are leaving everywhere because of the abuse that they are getting and low salary and,
I realize there's not a whole lot of room to move in here, but if we don't get below that default, we're gonna lose this.
Oh, and right now with if you look at the cuts I've got, we're under the default. So, and just to let you know, with what we just talked about with the fire department,
Yep.
with what I'm going to be working with Pat Smith, that I'll be talking with him either Thursday or Friday, because I've already talked to him about the projections here, and he's looking to cut some additional. So he's in agreement with what I presented to you guys.
Awesome.
Okay? Those cuts alone, and then there's a couple minor ones in here, get us under the default, okay? If you look at Chief Krause's stuff, and for some reason there's a calculation thing here that's off by $2, but everything is matched up with the default, okay? Because the employee pay plans match up with the default, and he's right. And in all honesty, if we increased his salary to where he's supposed to be, that's still part of the default, but he's not doing it to keep the overall number down. So the only increase that's over and above the default is the electric,
Yeah.
okay, with the adjustments. So, and because he's kept everything else in check. So,
And part of the things that I also did in my budget with preparing my budget and presenting my budget is I did make cuts in my budget.
Bless you.
So I should have a lieutenant position, I should have a sergeant's position, and I
Right.
should also have a corporal's position. I don't have any of those in this next year's budget. None of those positions, except for one sergeant's position, is being looked to be filled. So I am making some significant cuts in my budget to make sure that I can try and stay under the 2%. So by doing that, again, hopefully my wife is not watching because she's not gonna be a happy person, but I'm putting that extra work upon myself. If I don't get to hire a sergeant that has experience and expertise, then
You're
I'm
stuck
not
doing
taking
it.
vacation again, and I'm not getting days off. So those are the problems. When I have 7 patrol guys and just a chief, then who's the person who's gotta answer all the phone calls, and who's the person who's I can leave in charge? I can't very well leave people in charge when I have 7 patrol guys and all of them have under a year on the job, can I?
No.
So that's why I need to hire at least one other supervisor. So that's all I've put in my budget is one supervisor. When before, we had 3. 3 allows me to have a ton of experience at the agency and have 4 supervisors, 4 patrol officers. It allows us to spread out that work.
Yep.
But what I've done in my budget is I've cut all those down to just that one other supervisor other than myself.
You still working 8 days a week?
Still working.
yeah.
Still working 7 days a week.
20,
I only
20
ever see
22
you.
hours and 22 hours a
7
day.
days a week, 2 doubles, minimum a week, and on call 7 days a week, so.
You're the
7
only one I
days
ever see.
From Wednesday at 4 o'clock until Saturday morning at 6 a.m., I am your only police officer.
I promise I won't do anything.
By the way,
If you do,
I like everyone in the room to turn around and look at our newest officer that's here too. I'm not
He's like, "Don't look
Matt
at
off,
me."
I'm not letting Matt off the hook. Matt, if you would please, and I know I'm not the chair, but I'm trying to get you to introduce yourself to these guys because that's important.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you all. Matt Comer. I grew up here in Milton. So yeah, I graduated from Mute. Left for a little while, worked at a jail for a little bit, and then worked at the shipyard for the last 4 years, and now I'm here. And I'm excited to be here. I'm
Welcome.
excited for the community, get back involved in the community. It's really what I want to do.
Thank you.
Do you,
Thank you, Matt.
Welcome.
do you live in Milton?
I don't know. I live in Berwick, but my family lives here. My mother and my uncle own Buc-ee's down.
Oh, you're
Okay,
from
yeah,
Milton.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah,
And
then-
his wife's family is from Milton.
Yep.
Long-
they live
Long
on
Milton
Road.
emplo-
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
And
Welcome.
he's served in Buc-ee's.
I do, sometimes on Sundays, you'll see me there. Unfortunately, my wife doesn't wanna go to work. But, yeah,
So you're married to Kelly?
No,
Jessica.
Jessica
Okay.
Burrows.
Jessica Burrows, yeah. Comer now, well, I'm Comer.
I'll
My
always
maiden
know
name
her
is
as, I'll
Burrows,
always
but
know
I
her
am
as
not
Jess.
related
You're
to
not related,
anybody
no,
here.
okay. Yeah.
Or the Herds, the rich Herds, you know. Not related to them either.
Okay,
I just
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciate
Anybody
that.
else?
No, that's it. I just wanted to check with that because we have a pay scale. Now he explained it even better. It's a
Yeah.
one-time deal.
Yeah.
So therefore.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't gonna ask for anything. I just needed just a little more.
Okay.
And you're not gonna lose all those things that you haven't taken, have you?
All of what?
Oh, well, whatever it is that you didn't take on your, you should be taking.
All your money.
My vacation time?
You know, is that gonna be?
That's a conversation the selectmen and I are going to have.
And
So
by the way,
there.
and we know that, so.
All right.
The selectmen are fully aware that we're going to have that conversation.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I'm fine with it.
I haven't been able to take a vacation, so because I can't take a vacation, I am not losing my vacation time. But that's a conversation the board and I will have a conversation.
Well, if cars would stop setting on fire. If cars would stop setting on fire.
What?
I was driving down 125 and there's a car on fire.
Yeah,
and
I was there before when it was smoking. The guy says, "No, I've already taken care of everything." The guy that owned the car. I stopped for him and he goes, "I got it. I'm all set."
And
I was
then-
there
Next thing you know,
seconds later and it
he
was,
he
yeah.
walked out and I said, "You sure?" Because I could smell it. He goes, "No, we're all set. There. I got somebody coming." And next thing I know, I see this morning that it went up in flames after he walked
Yeah,
off.
somebody was coming.
Yeah,
Chief Marie.
yeah,
Chief Kraus was there first.
yeah,
He's like, nope, you can't go home. I'm like, nope.
yeah.
Go
Yeah, it was-
around.
I had to go McKigney Road over to Newt Road.
Thank God he was pulled up where he was, because it was out of the way.
A little bit.
The things I miss, having to go to Portsmouth.
Things I miss staying in Milton.
Yeah.
Not going anywhere.
Biggest part for me was, oh, and by the way, I did make the adjustments. I gotta talk with you afterwards because I put in the adjustment for the retirement change. And it ends up being a couple, with the calculations here, it ends up being a couple bucks difference, actually higher than yours was, so I'll just validate it with it. It's only because I didn't do the two salaries the way you did, the first half and the second half. I just did the total,
Okay.
so it comes up a little. So, and it works out within a few dollars, and it's default anyway, so
Cool.
Well, thank you for your service, chief.
Yeah.
And,
it makes up for the
much
difference
more
in the
explanation
$2 on the
you
other
gave me.
thing.
Yeah.
Anybody else for the chief? Other than thanking him profusely and maybe delivering cookies at some point in time?
No cookies, I have to stay in shape.
Oh, I thought he was
Matt
giving
would
us
like
some.
That'll take cookies.
I thought you were asking him to deliver cookies to
found
us.
out.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Thank you, Chief. I did find the piece in there anyways. It was under I had the wrong, some reason or other, I ended up typing in 580. I get dyslexic. 4558, and now there's no $2 mistake.
Do you want to bring up the minutes? Do you while you're hooked up, so we can
can
approve them
I
for
can do that.
September 27th?
I can do
More
that.
of those.
And once again, Amy, thank you, because there really wasn't a whole lot of changes at all.
Where is it?
because there was no recording.
Minutes.
Ah,
Yeah, well,
I know.
it was
I got-
streamed, but it did not.
I got blasted for it.
Which one are we doing? The 27th?
The 27th, yes. I was like, oh goodness.
It's, oh no, it wasn't. That was one of those ones that wasn't much we could do. There was
Yeah.
been some issues with the system. All right, so there they are with the changes.
Excellent. I will take a motion to accept the minutes of September 27th, 2022 with changes.
I will do that motion.
I
I'm just
will.
looking at the changes because I want to say I probably added.
Yeah, you did.
You
There was
did,
some
yep.
that's where
course
some
I
of them
did.
were highlighted instead. I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Thank you.
And you have them, so you can
And I will post those.
with the change.
Okay, we had, Virginia from the Conservation Committee reach out to add some money to her budget. It was for mailing. So has to do with the wetlands and any changes to the wetlands the abutters need to know. They can post it electronically, but mailing gets to the abutters, and she just didn't have that in her budget. So she asked if she could add that in. Humphrey has made the changes, and I think that if we agree, we can actually vote on that tonight.
I wanna make
How
one
much
up.
is it?
Okay, let me address the fact that their legal defense default was $1,000, but they had a warrant article, so that $1,000 is now
Gone.
gone. So they subtracted $1,000. She increased from the printing, went to $250, and actually the original request was $50. It was $50 for supplies and $75 for postage, so she asked for $250 for the printing aspect of that and $275 for postage. So all in all, I'm gonna show you the bottom line is their budget went down.
Yeah.
Their budget dropped 2%, so it went from 6254, and their request is for 6125. So they did manage to keep the budget down with the added, some of the stuff
So
they added.
We're voting on this little piece?
You can.
I think we
All right, I'll
can
make a
do that.
motion to accept the changes in the final budget for the Conservation Commission.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mike?
I, sorry.
Okay. So what I will do is I will capture this part of the budget here,
Excellent.
copy, and we know this will be the numbers.
Yay,
I
one
actually
down.
want to.
How many more to go?
I
Too
gotta
many.
do, I gotta do this and save as, so I know what the date
Yeah.
is.
Do we have town report? I wanna go home.
As long as.
No,
it's
there's
done.
no town expenditures. I just got them in my email today, so.
Yeah, she sent them late tonight, so we'll get those taken care of.
Well, this
Where
would
am I
not be a
doing?
normal meeting, just kinda
Operating
like the
budget.
school
Yeah.
stuff,
All
but I
right.
asked you to please take that out.
Yeah.
I ain't doing nothing tonight.
I will be sending, as I said earlier, I'll be sending this back out to everyone with any updates we make. Chris Jacobs asked if I would run with this because he's been dealing with a lot of personal issues, and because what was happening in the past, when I was the chair, is I'd do it, send it to him, he'd go through, send it back out. Well, we're gonna cut the middleman out, and I go, I'm representing the board anyways, so if we do, whatever we do, I'll just be sending it out, and it'll go out to the department heads as well, so. That'll save save time and effort in the long run, and it'll also help eliminate some mistakes, because we did have some mistakes
Yeah, back
when
and
we were
forth.
going back and forth with them as to which one went out. So,
Excellent. Anything else from the
Yes.
budget committee?
Yes. Madam Chair.
Ms. Hurd?
I did notice in one of your agendas, or one of your something or others, that we are presenting our budget to you on the 29th of November.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, except you're gonna love this. Adam is doing all Google. He had to set up an account for me so that he could send it to me. And I just took my little laptop in and said, "Here, honey,
it's all set.
I want a little icon." So what I do is press and go, "Oh, okay." I hate Google. I hate it. Anyway, the budget, the guy is amazing. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's good.
The budget is like 95%
Complete?
completed.
Sweet.
So
That's something
so
we're not
that's
used to.
94.5% above where we've been.
194%.
I was trying to be nice. Trying to be nice.
That's
Good.
Anyway,
awesome.
On the
That's good.
29th, what I would like to do is request that we do our meeting at the school in the
Okay.
cafeteria.
That's fine.
It's recorded, it's, everything else, but just room.
Yep.
Because we have a lot more guests generally.
Yep.
Okay, so I will set that up.
Perfect.
Yeah, no,
At
he's,
the new cafeteria?
Yep.
but seriously, I am,
That's
Oh, that's
that's
good.
amazing.
I mean,
And
he's been
that's-
asking me a lot of questions, like, okay.
That's good.
But, yeah,
Perfect. Awesome.
Last year, budget?
I know. It was after December, yeah.
Oh my.
And it wasn't even remotely close to being done. Excellent, thank you, Peg. So I will notate that when we do our agenda for the 29th of November, the move of the meeting, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very
And
much.
just a reminder, I will not be here for the
For the
20, whatever
25th.
it is. our
You know, it's
meeting.
the day
but-
after my birthday, and I'm really sad that you're not gonna be here.
Well, I'll bring a cake early,
I
but
I thought maybe we could have cupcakes. Yeah, I don't know.
Is that a hint, some of
No,
my-
no, I'll bring them. I'll bring them. Okay.
Well, I'll
Um,
tell you what, email me, because this is one of those webinar things, so I
Oh.
will be at home.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just sit out there and then I can come in and have a cupcake.
Uh, Cool.
Anyway, there's something else I was gonna say. Oh, but, I mean, tomorrow we do whatever month we're looking at, September,
Okay.
so
Just, yeah,
have it
just,
sent and then I will make sure, but I don't know who will be filling in for me.
that's fine. And if you send it early enough with the comments, if nobody can fill you in, Humphrey or myself can talk to the
We'll know
points
what
too.
you have.
Well, I
Yep.
could even talk to you that afternoon and say, okay, so 9:36, because.
How long you gonna keep me on the phone this time?
Stay on the phone.
Just joking, you know that. Yeah, I know.
Wait a minute, this is the one.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And then I believe that Mr. Carrier had some questions for Selectman Humphrey. So he's got the answers for those.
I'm gonna address what we've got, so that your first one about the assessing and the encumbrance. I wanna talk a little bit about when the money was 2 years ago, that assessing contract was encumbered. That was the 2020 timeframe, and they kept it in the budget. And last year, they had encumbered it before the end of the year, or they were encumbering it, if you remember on our discussion. So, as the chair last year on the budget committee, I says, we're not gonna have double again this year. You're not
Right.
gonna ask for it to be encumbered, which is fine, because they had the money already from carrying over, because they hadn't used it. I says, if you're encumbering it, we're not gonna ask for it. It'll go back into the contract the following year. So, and it is, but it's not at that amount. So,
Which one's that? The 19,195?
the change that I made, and I'll show you, and I've got it up here on the contract assessor, is 19,860 is the new contract
Okay.
from them.
Now,
From 40,000?
Yeah, because they never spent the full 40, and it was a multi-year contract, that the contract expired last year, this past year, and with this year, and they've spent some of the money, but we have the new contract that now makes it 19,860, because they don't have to do as much as they were doing to try to catch up.
Okay.
So that's what that was. And if you noticed, I even put the note in, was listed as 42,096.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a new contract. I sat with Chris, he pulled the contract out and said, this is what we've got, okay?
that still, it belongs right into the contract, so it needs.
Yes, so it rolls into the contract and it's a default, because it is an agreed upon contract.
Okay, so now the assessing, numbers will come out, correct?
Correct, it's gonna be all under their assessing, under the assessing department. Under the planning and code piece, the salary, I talked to you before the meeting, but just so everyone else knows.
Sure.
The salary, when you looked at, you put the 28,880, that was not the salary, that's everything under the contract for planning and code. His salary is actually 24,000, let me pull it up here.
Okay, what that 28,880, that was for the CEO. That's,
Yeah, that included the CAI software updates and that also at one time had GIS software listed as $4,000.
Yep.
That's been dropped. Mr. Woodruff's salary will be a discussion, just like it is with any of the other contracts for the BOS. Any of the adjustments that'll be made, that'll be a decision, and Mike, you're familiar with that. We'll make the contract decision on what the contract will be. And then, but that'll also be adjusted here, and it'll go in with the default, so it won't change the difference between the default and the final budget.
Now, the 120 line was the CEO, because he's currently making 28,880, but
Yes, that's a code enforcement officer, and I've gotta find out That's most likely gonna go up
CEO,
2%,
okay.
but that'll
Okay,
be,
what?
that'll be both, the code enforcement officer, not,
No, I
not
know
the
what I mean.
CEO
When
of
you
the
say
buil- I
CEO,
know.
I'm going,
Yeah,
Officer.
well, that's
Really?
because they didn't put building inspector, he is code enforcement officer, so yes, that's also gotta be looked at when we get with the BOS as to what that is, but that'll go up with both, that'll go up as far as both the, default and the budget, because it's part of the employee pay plan. But if you notice up here, I left them in yellow,
Yes.
because I hadn't gotten the final information on
Okay.
it. That was the reason that was there, and I was gonna talk to it tonight anyways.
All right.
So, under the planning board, and this was a good catch on your part, because I brought this back up, they actually have a capital reserve fund for that, and it got charged to the planning board instead of being charged to the capital reserve fund. So, and that was found out today, after I got your thing, because I went back and I says, we had already asked this question earlier, why was it charged? But they went and dug into it and found out that it was supposed to be charged to the capital reserve fund that was set up for doing all this digitizing and the maps and everything else. So that will get moved over, so this will not be, we're not increasing the budget, that was part of the charges.
Okay, is that 395 line gonna go?
The 395 line will still be $500 in case there's any map changes based on, remember what the planning board does, is they go and take any changes that might happen to property lines and things like that that could affect the map. Let me pull up the planning board piece. There is still information for GIS mapping right here.
Yep.
That'll stay the same as the $500 line item. So in the event any changes to the planning aspect of things, that might change property borders and all that, that affects the GIS map, so that's just to turn around and,
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt. Will that be professional services? Because they don't have a line.
it could, but they don't have one under there for the planning board, it was just a particular line item.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, no, they don't have a separate line item, so we kept it there.
Okay,
Yep. The last one under the insurance and benefits, and, I mean, you already know that, that's not changing until we get the new information. So we're not gonna change, last year was the same thing. We don't have a say in that insurance and benefits. That'll just get, when we get the new information for the medical insurance, the life insurance and that,
I'm trying to think.
that will get updated as we get into the November timeframe.
I'm suspecting it's gonna go up.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt, that's gonna go up. I've already seen some increases in the federal insurance aspect
Yeah,
of things that
November
are coming.
1st is our meeting. and
Yeah.
That's when we set the
Yep.
rate.
So the last part I want to address was Mr. Jacobs' comment when we had it and I want to address the department head concern, okay?
Yep.
You heard from one of the department heads when we talked about the cut. It's not the cut services. The other one I've been in contact with, already talked with him, and that's Mr. Smith for the highway department. When that came up, that he says his concern was going to be that it would cut services. When he saw what I cut and what the proposal was, he says, oh, I was gonna take more out than that. So he's making some additional adjustments. He agreed with what I put down, and it is not gonna affect services. The $190,000 was before we had made some of the adjustments to the default, because the employee pay plan, they hadn't been changed. If you look at what the difference was before, it wasn't even that, it's actually slightly under that. Even though I'm taking money out, like from the fire department because of the increases, that part of it right there, we had other changes in there, so I think the difference between the default and where the total wasn't even gonna be that much, because there were some other increases in there as well.
Well, those
So-
were the meeting minutes of 9/26.
Yeah, and that was his estimate at the time.
Yeah, well, I wanted to put the board so they
Yep.
see what the numbers we
Yep.
were looking at.
And in all honesty, at the time, it showed a 7.5, there was a twofold issue when that came through. And you brought it to my attention, when I put this out initially, and I had sent it to Chris, we had the 2022 default instead of the 2023 default in there, because when it got copied over, it didn't adjust. So it looked like we had a 7.5% increase. The increase is actually from the department heads. The increase is only 5.66%. Okay, so there, at 7.5%, we needed to find more money. At 5.66%, it's not that we didn't need to find money, but the default came up, so the difference was not as bad. So I'm glad you bring these up, because that's the only way everybody gets an understanding of what's being done.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, like those reports I get, I need that detailed report.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll be getting a new one, and I'll be talking with Brittany. We just got the financials, and basically what I'm gonna do, and make sure everyone understands, is when I get that and I do the update, and I know Laura will do the update too, because I have to report on both, but I'll also make sure, because I'll talk with her this next week, I like to make sure any adjustments are made before I ask for the year-to-date
Yeah.
total for the detail one, so I will get she probably did include the detail one in there. I won't see it unless I get into my
Let me look
other
real quick.
account.
You didn't send it out, did you?
I just got it.
No, she just sent it out. Matter of fact, she was walking out the door when I said, hey,
Yeah.
and she says, I just sent that report. That was
Yeah,
one of
she
the
was
last
late
things she did
leaving.
before she left the meeting, the building.
She did month-to-date detail
Okay, and I'm gonna ask for
and
year-to-date.
year-to-date detail.
Oh, she gave both. Okay, so she did give us both, so
Yep.
you'll see that.
That year-to-date helps a lot.
Well, I asked her, because remember in the past, and then you remember going back 3 years,
Yes.
we weren't getting any of that, and it wasn't until we met with Chief Kraus in his office over there.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there one day, and he's going through all this stuff, and this may be new, and all of a sudden,
And we met
we
with
went, and we
several
went,
of them.
what are you
going,
reading from? The detailed expenditure report. Oh, that'd be nice if we had that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So it was like, the budget committee had never seen it. And then it was like, oh, and I mean, I was putting detailed information in, but to get the actual breakdown of every line item,
It
yeah,
wasn't,
so,
no, I mean, I remember going to those meetings
Oh,
and
yeah.
spending in their little offices, going,
Yep.
okay.
yeah, oh yeah, no, that was a big surprise, so getting that, and it was too hard to do it on the monthly,
Yeah, yes.
because then you have to go back and say, well, what was it last month? So now as we get the year-to-date, it is easier.
It's a big help for me.
Yep,
Yeah, and Bob, I really want to make sure that you know how much it is appreciated, how thorough you are, because it can be daunting, and you do an amazing job. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad he does the
I've been on
town.
it for a long time, and I'm still learning.
Yeah,
I'm still learning.
You do a great job
You-
with the town.
yeah, you
Thank
do
you.
amazing.
School's a
So,
little difficult, but I'll get there.
But you know what,
Excellent.
I get yelled at for going through
Why?
from other people, for going through line by line of the school
That's too bad.
expense report.
I agree, that's too bad.
Because
Going,
I used to do
why is this over? I need a reason for why this is over.
Well, the thing is, you take month to the current one, you go across line by line, you can see the difference.
yeah.
Something has occurred, you see the encumbrance.
They have to realize they're accountable to the taxpayer, and we are representing the taxpayer, and
Thankful somebody's looking
excuse
at
me.
it.
What?
Makes me thankful somebody's looking at it.
Yeah. All right.
When we're
excellent.
off the thing, I will tell you a story about that.
All right. Speaking of that, any other questions? Anything else that anyone would like to address?
I would love to have an updated MS9, please.
I'll get that.
Thank
I
you.
already had that on my
I thought I remembered you saying something,
Yeah.
and then Bob, you had
I'll get that.
at least those. We
Well-
never get them.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well,
we should have those too,
actually,
What?
and we should have those too.
Yeah.
no, actually, the last 3 pages is all you need, the rest of it is
Yeah. That's,
perpetual care and,
You start with page 13.
I think so, somewhere in there.
the first three quarters or more is all cemetery,
Cemetery,
perpetual
yeah.
care.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's why I never found the Newt one, because it was like cemetery. Okay, town, and the actual school ones
Yeah.
are at the end. And then one day I'm going,
Oh wait.
let me kind of look above here. Oh look.
Yep.
All right. So our next regular meeting is going to be, or our next meeting will be October 25th. Peg will not be here. Just to reiterate that, we will have the information, and if she doesn't have somebody coming in to help her or just explain. I'm
Read the
sure
answers.
myself,
That's the answers.
yes, I'm sure myself or Humphrey will be able to do that. And at this time, I will take a motion
I
to
make a motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
fly,
I have to share this, Mike. You'll love this one too.
I